Yo, welcome to Our Strange Ideas, boys. I'm here with my boy Chris.
I'm a boy.
And I'm Danny.
Real boy.
Hell yeah. Alrighty. So I just thought we'd do a little bit of a synopsis of the last one. There was a couple things I left out that I really want to recommend. First of all, if you were interested at all in the AI learning stuff, I highly recommend looking up hide and seek. Yeah, hide and seek, where they learn to play hide and seek, because that's probably one of the most interesting things. And pay attention to the words used. It makes it kind of look like it happens fast, but he says like millions of like playthroughs and stuff like that. So like it's not happening short. Like that's over tons and tons of time.
And trial and error.
It's just interesting because they're not incentivizing any behavior, but just based on trial and error and learning codes and stuff, they're able to learn some really unique things.
Yeah, totally. And what we're going to talk about today, was it veganism? Was it animal rights?
Yeah, we were
tired of those people.
So we were talking about AI rights, and we thought, like, hell, fuck it. Let's, like, roll on with rights and move on to animal rights and kind of where we think that should be / where it is now and how it might change in the near future.
All right, there's many approach to this. Some people think that animals deserve just as much rights as humans. There are positions to where animals deserve maybe not equal rights, but they deserve enough rights to basically sustain their life and their presence on this place. And there are some people that just say no rights, and we basically leave it to evolution / if they can survive. It's basically the most Darwinian approach. They need to find a way to survive, and if they don't survive, then that's on them as a species.
Right, and as atheists, we should bring up the Christians' belief, or like at least some of them, where they kind of just think that they were here, put on this earth for us,
for our consumption, and as long as we're consuming them, we're using them right.
Right, they're just tools for us. Like some would say, like perhaps like God has like measures of like, oh, you shouldn't eat them like overabundantly. Like you should make sure you're valuing their life, being careful with it. But like essentially, they're here for us, though.
Oh yeah, well, and not only that, I find that view. Oh, how do I put it? So problematic to the point where everything is just a tool for us. Mm-hmm. And how we've seen what we've done to our oceans and all these other things by using things as our tools. Granted, they'll argue probably back that we're doing it too excessively and that we haven't done it correctly, which I'm fine with. But so far, our ideas of tools has been excessively exploit and make money.
Right.
Capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting to think about that. So, where do you like stand on like how much you value animal right compared to a human right?
Well, it pretty much depends on the animal. I think some animals are really smart, like dolphins, and they deserve a lot more rights and protections than I say a chicken. I think a chicken's really stupid, and I'm fine with eating a chicken. That doesn't mean I destroy their existence, but I am fine with eating animals. I think that it's clearly shown that we can eat meat and that we can be healthy while eating meat. And I guess the vegans will come to me and say, well, you can't be optimally healthy. And there's been some evidence supporting that. There's some evidence detracting that. I tend to go on more of a vegan approach to my life. I try to focus on eating vegan 4 days a week, and then 3 days I eat meat. And that's just to keep my meat consumption lower because it is a carbon footprint. And I feel it's better to do it that way so we get our nutrients in diverse ways rather than just through meat consumption.
Right.
But optimally, I would like to be more vegan than not vegan.
Right. So essentially, I think where you're at, if I can just relay my response, like what I thought of that is essentially that you believe like similar to me as like there is like a level of intelligence where you become more valuable.
Yeah,
like,
and you
have more
respect
meaning.
that. Exactly.
So like as a human, we have more capacity for knowledge and understanding of what's going on. So we're more valuable than like a dog. But a dog clearly is more understanding and has more potential for experiencing pain than like an ant.
Yeah.
So like there's a ladder.
Yeah, and I feel that's very true. I mean, there is an argument to where animals feel is just as much pain that we do and emotions that we do. They just can't express it. And if that is true, then we should extend more rights to that. But I don't know because I've seen the level of their learning capabilities, and really the only time I've seen these crazy learning capabilities is really when it comes to apes. Apes have a really good, I mean, even birds. Some birds you can train them to do some really cool fucking things.
Right.
But
I think like
For the
we're
most
both in
part-
the position where we do
For the
believe,
most part, I do think humans deserve more rights than animals.
right? And yeah, they essentially experience
And
less.
I mean, my opinion's open to change on that, but that is my
Right.
current position.
Yeah, I don't think either of us are super set, but yeah, I'm in a similar position. I would
Hey.
say like based on like the level at which I don't value them as much, doesn't cuts off a little bit quicker. So like I would say like I still eat meat just out of convenience and my own personal failure, I think. But I think if I did follow my own moral code correctly, I would not eat meat at how much I value them, if that makes sense.
Well, that's basically where I am too. I want to cut it out more and more, and it's
Right.
hard when you work so much and the convenience of just eating
Right.
meat, and that's it's an unfortunate part of our life right now, especially. Man, like I just have so many people ask me to take their shifts, and I'm like, fuck, just leave me alone.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm already stretched. But I just wanted to say, hey, if you are vegan, vegetarian / Christian, atheist, even Mormon, we would love to hear from you. And you can reach us at OurStrangeIdeas@gmail.com, and you can message
Hell
us, and
yeah.
maybe we'll do an episode with you. But you have to say, hell yeah, praise Jesus Christ. No,
At
just kidding.
least once. No.
at least once through the thing. If you don't say it, we're booting you.
Yeah. So essentially, where do you think like are most likely? Because I think we can both agree we're not at like the optimal like moral place when it comes to meat consumption
Yeah.
/ the way we treat animals.
And I mean, it's also American culture,
Right.
Because fast food, burgers, fries, steaks, they're just what so many people see as this is optimal. This is the best food you can
Right.
get when you have a really good cooked steak. Well, I'm not gonna lie, they're fucking tasty. But I mean, me and Danny, we've talked. We actually prefer veggie burgers more. They're just a lot more expensive, and the only place that we can
Right.
get them is farther away than
Right.
where we are at, and it just becomes inconvenient. But what's great though is that we were talking, and they are getting to the point where they can ethically grow meat better, or it's going to be more cheaper for people to buy vegetarian options, which I am very excited for.
Right. Yeah. So based on like,
I keep mixing up the words vegan and vegetarian, and
Right.
that's on me.
I kind of
What are your views on using animal products then? Because that is the big distinction. Are you more on the vegetarian side? Are you cool with drinking milk?
so based on the way we're doing it now, definitely more on the vegan side. But I do believe, like based on their intelligence levels and stuff, that there is a place for easily allowing using animal products morally. The problem is we're just not there yet, and at the levels we consume them, I don't think we could be.
Well, I was going to say we put the animals through very terrible standards of living to get to their milk, to get to the
So
eggs.
essentially if we
and I was going to say, yeah, I would feel if we could do it in much more humane ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is humane the right word? I guess just a lot more ethical. It just in a more ethical way, I would feel a lot better about doing it. But so far, I agree. It's very
And
sad what we put them through.
ideally, we would find a way to do it without directly like using an animal, kind of like how they're growing meat now from just meat cells. I would hope the same thing for like animal products. But I do believe like if we could drastically lower consumption to like a reasonable level, and then actually have an ethical way of like producing those goods, I would have no problem being vegetarian.
I mean, same thing.
Granted, I'm not even living at that moral now, so it's kind of hypocritical to say that. But that's where I would like to be. The problem is it's just very hard, as we've talked about, whereas, like...
Well, whenever it comes to poverty, it's always higher to live at a higher standard, no matter what
Right.
that is. Because, I mean, just go ask people that are poor. Be like, hey, what are your options? I'll be like, I don't know. I just get what I can get.
Right.
And that's kind of where we're at. I mean, we're in a little bit of a better position, but we're working towards a lot of things that are basically putting us in that poverty situation where we can't spend a lot, where we have to actually be wary.
Because essentially our path
And
out of poverty is just ridiculous savings.
And I help people
percentage
with
of our
rent
income.
and things like that. And it's
Right.
difficult on me, but I have enough power to help them with it. But yeah. And so we're basically on more of the middle road approach,
Right, and
where
so I
we
think-
will extend them rights, but not as much as a human. And if we can do things ethically, then we're fine with
Right.
using animal products,
But that also does show where we're
rather
at.
than just
even
the
though,
absolution of
Even
not.
though I would say some of it is just a failure of me, it does show, though, that, like, I value them low enough, though, that, like, if it comes at a major, like, cost to myself in time or money, then I'm not as willing to do it. And so that kind of shows, like, kind of where my moral layout is, even though, like, I would like to say I'm better than I am.
So could we say your will to survive is above the rights of these animals.
Right, so definitely, like, if I needed to eat it to survive, I would
I think that's even where most
absolutely eat a
vegans are.
chicken.
It just is right now, we don't
Right.
have to be at that standard.
Right.
And I
And
think
so the
that's why
point
we're
is-
saying at the moral optimal level, we don't hurt other things because
Right.
we don't need to. It doesn't have to be a part of our purview.
And so essentially...
And then some people bring up, oh man, but you're hurting plants. But plants are a little bit of a different standard. And the reason why
they're
is
even
because
lower
plants...
than, like, ants to me.
I mean, depends on the plant. There's some plants that are really cool. But, you know, it's not much higher if it was. But,
Right. Like,
but yeah, but plants, a lot of them produce asexually. I mean, some do produce sexually. But plants are so numerous that it's
Right.
just not at the same level.
Right, and they don't really show a lot of potential for pain. Not to say, like, I'm like, just, hell, if it didn't hurt us, I'd burn all the plants to the ground. Like, I'm not, like, actively going for that, but I'm absolutely not gonna, you know, put myself in any sort of...
And we have to survive some way.
Right.
Like, it would be unethical for us to just
Right.
starve ourselves and just die.
But even just
because
for,
we
like,
didn't want to harm anything.
slight
Unfortunately, life...
comfort.
Yeah.
I would still, like, you know, I'd pick an aloe vera plant. I'd kill an aloe vera plant.
And you
just
wouldn't
to
feel
help
bad about
soothe
it.
my
Well,
sunburn.
exactly.
Right.
Same.
Or would I just pull an aloe vera plant? Like, so essentially...
I was just showing, like, the...
Right.
Not really the ridiculousness of the argument, but it just isn't in the same scope at all. It just isn't in the same scope. And that's why... And that goes to our hierarchy that we value some intelligence over others, and humans tend to be up on top.
But that does come down to, though, like, we still believe that, like, if you don't have to hurt it, like, there's no reason to. And
Yeah.
you shouldn't. So therefore,
Well-
the path forward we see is to lower the personal cost, at least for me, of making those ethical choices so that it's easier for people to just do the right thing, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
because if we can make, you know, veggie burgers, let's say, at a higher demand, and then the cost will naturally go down as because they you know, they actually supply it at a reasonable level. I think it would cause the cost to go down, because right now there's just not a big enough demand to really have sufficient production.
Yeah. Basically,
or-
the idea has to become popular enough for companies to realize that it's profitable.
Right,
And then supply and demand will do the rest.
Right, and then make it at affordable prices.
Yeah. Well,
and
one thing
so-
that's also in Utah culture, I mean, when we talk about religion, religion definitely tends, I mean, we already said it, but animals and plants are here for our use, and they tend to be on very much, they're not really for animal rights. And I've heard a lot of stories of, and I said and again, god damn it. But there's a lot of stories of animal cruelty within the church also coming with growing up, and I was one of those people where I didn't give a shit if animals were hurt when I was Mormon, just because it didn't seem important. They seemed to be more of objects for me to use and take advantage of rather than living things when I was within the church. I don't know if that was your experience, but I've heard that from other Mormons as well. And that it just, animal suffering wasn't nearly put on a level of severity that I should have put it on. And I think
Yeah.
that's the same with a lot of people. And it
So
was very more recently that I came to this position. I think it was like 1 to 2 years ago I finally realized I wanted to become more vegan. And that's very recent compared to how long I've been in the church, I guess. But I just wanted to bring that out there, is that I had a difficult time. And if you're listening and you happen to be religious, I would definitely look at that, because I didn't even realize that it was a big issue until it was presented to me. And I was dumbfounded. I just felt stupid because I didn't realize how low I put things as, when I viewed things as my objects, my things to take advantage of. And when that possession was mine, it just felt I had the ability to create and destroy, much like God does to humans. I was being a God figure to these animals and being very cruel / didn't have good opinions. I wasn't really going out and hurting anyone. I didn't show a psychopathic behavior, but to me that wasn't a big deal. If someone went and kicked a chicken, I wouldn't have felt bad. But now when I see that, I'm like, why the fuck are you doing that? That chicken didn't do anything to you. Like,
Right.
leave it the fuck alone. There's no reason to hurt that being for existing. But
Right.
I think that was just my tie into religion a little
That
bit.
is interesting. Yeah, I didn't really have that feel within the church, though. Like, it did just, like, kind of scapegoat, like, eating it for me. Like, where it was just kind of like, okay, these are here for us, though. Like I wouldn't just, like, I was absolutely opposed to just, like, hurting an animal for no reason. Like, I would
Well,
have been
I was
offended.
I was already pretty much there, but I just didn't put it at, like, I wouldn't
as
do it.
high
But
a
if I
level?
saw someone do it, I wouldn't have stepped in and been whoa, what? Why are you hurting
Right.
that? I would have just been like, oh, that was dumb, but
Right.
it's just an animal.
So I feel like I wasn't quite at that level, but I do agree that I had a similar thing where it made it easier to just like scapegoat, not really caring
Yeah.
about things. And then after leaving the church, it did take me a long time too, because like you just eat meat so often.
Well,
like,
it's the routine. You're just a
in
part
the
of a routine.
back of my head, like I think like I knew that like at some level I think like it was probably wrong, and that I'd like to try to start finding ways to be like vegan or vegetarian in like an effective way, but it's just so hard to even like want to approach that you just kind of ignore it.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. To me, it was more of just a non-factor because I never thought about it. I would just, oh, this is food. It's not an animal right now. It's just food. I'm not gonna think about what else it entails. But what helped you tip to that point? What was one of the tipping points? Since you had a longer time and I had a longer time, I was just going to ask you, and then I'll give you my experience. Or if you want my experience now, I can just give it.
Yeah, I can't actually think of my tipping point, so I'll let you go.
My tipping point was pretty much when I started watching other atheists on YouTube, and they brought up the position of, hey, there are some really fucked up things going up in the animal industry, and it became the animal industry that I ended up just hating. This industry does so much exploitation of farmers, workers, and animals. It's disgusting to me. And that was one of the major tipping points, is when I was seeing how unethical they were. And then once I saw how unethical they were, I felt, man, I got to give these things a lot more respect, because they deserve it, in my opinion. This is just not okay to me. And that was really my big tipping point, was how disgusting the industry is what led me to having, was what basically made me want to give rights to these animals. And it started with the workers as well. It's a really good thing to point out. When you point out the industry, don't always just go straight to the animal. If you want to show them what they're doing to their own employees and workers. Because I think the company's JBS Chicken or Farms, and they do so many fucked up things to their farmers. Like, they have them compete with each other to use the least amount of food to fatten up their chickens, and it just allows some shady behavior, especially when they try to sabotage each other so that they can get their extra bonus just to survive.
Oh, damn.
And they're just in these absurd contracts, and it just makes me so sad. And then once I learned that, I was like, man, what else does this need to happen? Then I just went down, and it just naturally went down to animals as well. And it really helped me see this position. And again, we're still growing, and you can see where we ultimately want to be. And so, if that can happen to people like us, if you want to help change other people, my opinion is just expose the industry, because I'm down for ethical things, but just how unethical they've been and how they proceed themselves or how they act just makes me sick.
That makes sense. I think I came across that a little bit after the side. I couldn't like point out a specific time where I started to like tip over. I think it was at one point I was just like a little bit more bored, maybe not quite like a little bit more down for like a couple months, if that makes sense. And so I think I was essentially just thinking like, okay, like we've talked in the past, like self-improvement is like a good option. So essentially I was looking at like, what do I think like I am not doing ethically, especially because it was like probably like, oh, you know, I've been out of the church for like a year. I've been thinking about all my positions on things. So it's kind of just like maybe doing like a reevaluation. Like there wasn't like a specific time, but just over the period of like a month or two, like where I was just kind of evaluating what I believe and how I should be living if I was being ethical, like kind of thinking of like maybe products I consume, like not like food, but like is buying a cell phone ethical and stuff like that. And essentially trying to determine where I can make the most impact. And that is when I hit a point where I was like, oh shit, like some of my energy, and I've still had a hard time trying to figure out the balance of like where I should put my energy the most.
Well, even just carbon footprint, like if you care about the environment, that is a big issue as well. Vegans have got a great talking point there. It is a great advantage to be vegan if you want to lower your carbon footprint and just help the world be better.
Yeah, I did look at that as well. I mean, essentially, the thing I ran into with it is I did hit the point, like, when I was thinking, just like, okay, ideally I would be vegan. But then I started comparing, like, okay, but there are kids in Africa that don't have food, so should I put my effort more towards helping them? Or is it, of course, I can do them both at the same time, but realistically, as much as I like to think, like, it's just a choice of which food you consume, like, it takes a lot of effort because of how our society is set up, where like everything has meat in it, like or an animal product. Like if you're gonna buy a frozen meal, it probably has an animal product or meat in it.
Even if you buy simple things like lotions /
Right.
maybe even some detergents, cleaning products. There are some things that have animal products in there that you just
Right,
wouldn't
or like
think about it.
if you're gonna go out to eat, like,
I mean,
there's not a lot of
maybe some of those were not, but I know there's animal products and things that you don't think about all the time.
yeah, for sure. And if you're gonna go out to eat, like there's not a lot of restaurants that offer good.
Well, and who you eat with too, because
For sure.
my significant other, we go out to burger places and we do this, and it's because, she grew up in a different culture. She's Native American, and so they have a whole different idea. Granted, her position is a lot more respectful to animals than not, because due to her background. But let's say that you come from, your significant other is from a different area that does not have that same values, and it's difficult to be
Right.
like, hey, we got to go full vegan together,
Right.
and that would be they might be like, no,
Right.
I still want to do this. And then if you want to eat out with them, you can still choose it, but they will still choose the other option.
And
but
there is absolutely a social inconvenience.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna
Going to
lie,
parties,
one of the biggest
even just
factors
pizza.
that kept me from like becoming vegan is the fact that like there wasn't always easy vegan food to eat, and like it would be putting somebody at an inconvenience, like asking them and stuff like that, and there is kind of like a stereotype around it where even just like if somebody finds out you're vegan, like it can be detrimental.
Oh yeah, well,
Right, and so, like,
I think
essentially,
most
like-
of the things they put you is like, oh man, you're just a
Right.
you're just a wuss, you're just a hippie, and
Right,
you just want to
or,
help
like,
the environment.
self-righteous.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
it's they're usually, I mean, of course there are some people that are self-righteous about it.
Oh, yeah.
But for me, it's a dumb criticism to criticize someone that just wants to be better or make the world
Right.
a better place.
And so
that's like such a
essentially-
shitty argument.
Essentially, I was embarrassed to be doing it, and like,
Well, let's even put it in the
At that
confines of
point-
this home.
right,
Even within our home, it's not like an accepted position, really. I think it's
Right.
I think it's just you and me.
like, yeah, like we can do it, but like, that's not exactly the food that's going to be available when
yeah.
we buy foods and stuff like that, and so it's actually just incredibly inconvenient to always have it available. So what I've kind of just come down to is just choosing it when it's a possibility. Like if I'm going to buy food at the grocery store, I'll usually buy vegan food. And like if I'm going to go out to eat, if there's a place close that has vegan food.
Bean burgers are so good, guys.
Yeah, bean burgers are freaking
Bean burgers are
amazing.
so good. What are they called? The spicy black bean burgers. Try them, guys. If you guys don't like them, you guys don't know what's wrong with you, because
Right.
they are so good. They are solid.
Yeah. And so essentially that's where my position is, because it actually does come at a major inconvenience. So then it's like, okay, would it be more important to spend some of this energy, advocating for human rights, advocating for this, pushing, my political agenda, or maybe just like, I could spend money at McDonald's where they pay an employee $7.25, or if I buy like the meat platter at Walmart where they pay somebody $13.
Yeah.
Is that a better choice?
Well, it's so hard because when you really think about how much we can do, sometimes it's just so insignificant that it's hard to make a good decision. And
Right.
I
Well,
think
and
the
when
best
there's
thing you
how
can
many
do is to
things-
become conscious about what you're doing,
Right.
and to try to make those decisions. It's the metagame. It's so hard to metagame.
Well, because there is like a massive, like when you're trying to do something to benefit like the world as a whole or like the human race, like there is actually massive cost benefits to the choices you're making.
Yeah.
And I would argue that that's ended up being the biggest reason why I haven't been vegan and just do it subtle, is because I think that there's better places for me to focus my current energy, my capacity to improve myself.
Well, yeah. Well, it's hard because, what are you going to say to the person that's looking for racial equality, and you're just like, oh man, I'm focusing on veganism right now. Like that's a difficult thing to say
And
to
I-
someone's face, because to me, I would definitely focus on the latter of the person coming to me saying, this is what we need to focus on, because I have a lot of empathy for humans.
Right.
But yeah, it's extremely
Right.
difficult.
And it may sound
And
like
granted, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be a pick and choose. You can do both, but
Right.
you have so much time
But-
and so much effort that you
Yeah.
can put in before you drain yourself. And it's the same thing with politics or anything. Like, you have to sometimes take yourself back and take a break, because being an ethical / moral person, and I mean, we can get into morality and that kind of conversation of how real / fake or subjective it could be, and that's for another day. But to be a person that you optimally want to be, that takes a lot of effort. That does not come easy.
Right.
And I think anyone will say that, and it's exhausting. And it just goes back to, man, sometimes it's okay to indulge yourself in some little things just to keep yourself going. And it's a hard reality that I partake in sometimes, which is maybe just a failing of me as a person.
Right, but I think it is important to recognize our imperfection and that nobody's going to be able to achieve everything perfectly. So, like, though you may obviously be doing something wrong in one area, like, and that, like, it's like you could look at that and be like, it's weird. Like, why can't they see that that's wrong? But then at the same time, clearly everyone's going to have an area they're failing in. Not to say there isn't some people who are just doing amazing or like just killing it in all fronts. But I'm just arguing that, like, for your average person, like, you actually do to some degree have to pick and choose. Not to say you shouldn't continue to advocate that they get better at other things. But
well, and with limited resources, because I've donated, and you have to choose an organization. I don't have the fucking finances to be, I'll help everyone. Here's my $5. Take it as you will.
Just split it across everything.
Yeah. Here's a penny for you. Here's a penny for you.
Yeah.
Here's a dime for you.
It's really interesting. And then even, like, when you do decide how to, a cause you're most passionate about, and that's what you want to put your energy in, there's a ton of different approaches. Yeah. So, like at one point I kind of just decided, like, ending, like, extreme poverty is a pretty good, like, is probably my main focus, at least when it comes to, like, my time that I am trying to improve things.
Same.
And it's like there are so many ways, because there's one organization called Water that just focuses on getting people water, and by giving them water they have more time and resources, that they're not walking miles for water, they're not drinking, dealing with sicknesses related to that. There's another one called 1 Acre Fund that makes it so that, like, they help teach farmers how to effectively farm so that they can make a surplus. They can sell it, or they can,
and probably
help their
also
community.
to help the soil, because if you keep planting one form of crop, you end up sucking up all a specific nutrients out of the soil, and the soil becomes a lot weaker.
Right, and so essentially they've done studies that, like, by
basically
helping people learn how to farm more effectively and stuff, they can, like, double people's living standards, at least respectively. I don't know exactly, because, like, doubling somebody's living standard is a hard thing to measure, but, like, in terms of, like, their monetary value,
well, I think
they have.
I think you and I pretty much have the same approach: is housing, food, and water. I think are the major things that I focus on. I focus on the housing, because I can't do shit about water and food. I don't have any authority over that, but I can do some focus in housing, and that's really what we're trying to do, is create at least some sort of affordable housing, because the housing market is just nuts.
Yeah.
At least right now. I mean, hopefully it ends up going to a more stable level, but it just is rising and rising in our area.
Just wait, we're gonna have an empire of affordable housing.
Yeah, dude.
Mark my words. Yeah.
Well, no, that was the guy that I worked with that was showing me how to housing, and that's how I first came up with the idea. And at first, I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be more of exploitative. I wanted to be more of, I need to get money. I need to focus on getting rich.
Right.
And then I saw him, and I looked at where I wanted to be, and I'm like, those are two drastic different positions. Right. And it became an approach where I was like, you know what? If I have to sacrifice some credit just to help someone out, I will do it. Right. Because for me, because the guy I ended up working with, I just thought, man, you're smart when it comes to yourself. You're smart when it. I mean, granted, he wasn't really a genius. His dad's part of the 1%. So we're talking 1% millionaire type deal where he owns just a shit ton. So he's not really smart, but he had the funds to do it. And he created a little bit of housing. He bought a few houses with that. And I just realized his focus was always on money. And what's sad to me is that he actually had the resources to be able to take a few hits. Well, you and I don't actually have those resources, but I realized that I was willing to take that. I'm like, man, I have so much less than you, and I'm willing to take hits. Well, you are not willing to take hits at all. And you actually have things, and I just realized that's just a problem with our culture. Yeah, that absolutely. It's every man for themselves.
We absolutely have every man for themselves.
I'm for a mixed system when it comes to capitalism and socialism, but I definitely lean on the socialist side.
Or at least a reformed version of capitalism. Because if you're like with Yang, we're like, I'm very pro capitalism as long as it has effective safeguards like
Well, that's all
basic
socialism
income.
is. Socialism just means that you
Right.
have.
Well, I mean, if you
I mean,
really
it
break
means
it
more,
down,
but we're talking about a
Yeah.
mixed system. We're not talking about complete socialism. We're talking about a
Right.
mixed system, and
When we
that's
talk
basically
about
putting
the
in the safeguards
ideas
such as
and
food stamps and things. So that's basically the same thing. He just wants a
Yeah.
mixed system that leans more on the socialist side because he wants to have these
Right.
programs such as UBI.
Sorry, I mean, well, because like if you take like the literal definition of socialism, it's like the controls of the means of production, and so my version would be a capitalistic like a welfare system, which is different. I think. Oh no, I'm thinking of communism. Wait,
yeah, you're thinking
I
of
think I'm
communism,
confused.
but the thing with socialism, your definition is not entirely wrong. The problem is that it's a mixed system. So what if it's a complete social system? Then yes, you're right. But when we're still talking about a mixed system, the
Right.
capitalism still reigns as you control your means of production. It just is that you increase your safeguards. So capitalism still is there,
Absolutely.
but you just like it's leaning towards a system that's made to benefit people rather
Yeah.
than just
I
benefit
think
the
I'm being
people
too
that have
stingy
production,
on the definitions.
which is fine. I mean, the language barrier exists for a reason, and that's because we all have our own different ideas and presuppositions. And the thing is that I could be wrong about these definitions as well. This doesn't mean that I'm correct,
Right.
just because I can make a little bit of sense from it, because these could just be my presupposition just overruling the real thing of what's going on.
Like, yeah,
So
I
I'm
agree,
happy to
though,
be
like,
wrong
The most
about it.
effective thing
But
is
we're
a mixed
basically the
system,
same way.
or like I think there's multiple approaches, like where you can go leaning either way, but with proper safeguards of some kind, you can make them.
Well, I think
work.
once you're saying safeguards, I think that means that you have to lean
Right.
into the socialist thing, because the more you lean capitalistic, the more the free market
I was
reigns.
gonna say, or you could be socialistic with capitalistic type safeguards, like something to
Oh,
reward
got it. So you're saying you're
hard work. So by safeguards, I just mean something to fight against the failures of each individual system.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
like
use
capitalism,
each system to complement each other.
capitalism rewards hard work but doesn't give everybody equal access. Socialism gives people equal access but doesn't necessarily reward hard work very effectively.
Yeah. Well,
Slash encourage risk taking of any kind.
And I agree.
So
And-
like with different safeguards on both sides, you can allow
yeah,
for those things.
And it's difficult to actually determine, hey, where am I going to put these resources? That's where we've decided to put it. We're doing pretty well on that front, I think. Well, we haven't really started, but we're saving up. You've done better than I have, though.
Right.
But
Well, we're in different positions.
that is true. But either way, but yeah, just going back to veganism, really, if you want to talk to us more about it, I think it'd be super cool, because I really do want to push this agenda a little bit, because I feel that we're not putting animals at the place they should be.
Agreed.
And our culture definitely shows that. I don't think you can argue otherwise. Be like, oh man, McDonald's loves their animals so much.
Right.
Or even just corporations, because I've seen what Walmart, I mean, we worked at Walmart. I've seen what these retail stores do to them, and how they demand these foods be processed, how they...
Right, and
how they
how
end
they'll
up-
just
how,
throw them
like,
away
the
if they have like the least.
Exactly,
bit
they
of
have a blemish, they
imperfection.
just throw them away. Even just with fruits and vegetables, if they have a
yeah.
random blemish and the fruit's fine, we're told to toss them because no one's gonna buy them, and it's a real sad issue, because it's already been proven we have enough food to feed everyone. It just morally we're not there. Humanity just hasn't reached it there, and it's really unfortunate, because just think of the strides that humanity could make if we actually just reached at the empathetic level that we could be at.
Right, just took a little bit of time to actually effectively design a system.
Just
that
to go back to where
would distribute.
Just to go back to the
goods.
person that had everything that I wanted and
Right.
was not willing to take a hit. When I'm
Right.
willing to take a hit, and I just realized the levels of difference. Like, man,
We talk about it's
your
like
system of beliefs and what you do is, while you have so much more than me, is so much inferior to mine.
Right.
And the thing was, that's what, because he wanted to go in business with me, but I told him no, because I did not respect his ethics enough
Right.
to do it. And the thing is,
Essentially-
that was actually financially not smart for me to do. Financially, I would have taken that position because I could have gotten a lot farther with
right.
him.
He has more experience. He brings money.
Well, and he already has it. He already has what we're going for, and that's the big step: is getting
Right.
property.
yeah,
And-
it's a very interesting.
but
topic
again,
to be rolling
it's just
through.
so funny how even me myself. This does not mean that I'm perfect with it. I'm sure that I do things that I could have easily gave up to help someone else. And that could have even been as simple as time. Sometimes I'm not as efficient with my time with other people. But it's it's the metagame of life, and we're trying to metagame it right, and we're just trying to bring you the right attitude to make the world a worse fucking place.
Right. Yeah, we're just trying to bring ideas into the conversation so that you guys can look at the information and develop the best outputs.
To make it worse, not better.
To make it worse. That's right. Yeah, so I was going to talk a little bit about what do you think the biggest things changing right now are that can allow for this this change, because we talked a little bit about like how they can grow food. Shout out, it's Memphis Meats is one of the ones I've been looking at. They can actually grow meat from cells. They just haven't been able to do it at like a price effective level yet. What is the other one? There's one that just like made a deal with Burger King. I do not know.
Is that like their Whopper thing?
Yeah, they have the Impossible Whopper. I'm trying to remember the name of the company, but I can't think of it. But yeah. There's a couple big companies.
I really think the big strides is just humanity just becoming empathetic enough and realizing that we're so successful that we don't need all these excesses, that it's okay to take a hit when we already have so much of the world in our grasp. I can't even imagine a place that we don't have our tendrils in, because, I mean, besides maybe the bottom of the ocean, but that's just because of the pressure and how dark it is down there that we just can't put a human down there. But
because it isn't cost effective yet.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the bottom of the ocean.
Exactly. But
yeah, so essentially it sounds like we just have to make that transition from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance.
Yeah, and we just actually have to,
and like
we just have to realize, I think, also that we're not the center of the universe.
Right.
Even though we put ourselves at a really high level of importance, that doesn't mean that we should use our power to crush something else that's on the lower chain. I think that's it too. It comes back to going back to religion. Just because God's at the top of the totem pole does not mean that he can disregard or put other things and squander them. Because, I mean, this is going to be a bash, but because he does it in the Book of Mormon, he does it in the Bible, and a lot of the time it's directed towards us. But it just goes back. Do we want to be like that? Do we want to be like someone that doesn't respect resources and the environment, or do we want to be someone that does? It's always funny to me when you act pro-environment and people get upset by that, because who shouldn't be pro-environment? That's the dumbest position ever. I'm anti-environment. I hate where I live, and I just want to see it burn. It's the dumbest position to fucking take.
Right. Essentially, we've been pushed that, like, it's been pushed so hard that, like,
that it's like a liberal agenda that's just trying
the environment enough for it to matter. And then the other argument is just that if we try to change anything, it'll be at massive economic cost.
Yeah, and I know. And hey, guys, we can take a fucking money hit. If I already decided, hey, if McDonald's would pay their employees $15 an hour, which I'm for UBI, but if they did, I would be willing to pay an extra $1 for a fucking burger. If you guys can't handle that shit, then I'm sorry, but maybe you guys have some issues you want to take. And I get poverty's a thing, but then guess what? You don't have to go to McDonald's.
But if we effectively give everybody,
that's what I was going to say. Effectively, if we give everyone that, then everyone should be able to afford it. But
then everybody's in a position to afford it.
And that's the thing, is that we want to look at from a place where we can make everyone improve. We want to help everyone.
Right.
And that even includes the rich. I mean, granted, I think they should pay their fair share, but I want them to succeed in their life as well. I just feel like crony capitalism has led to a point to where they're too successful and that they're not sharing back and putting back in the system.
And they still, like, somehow, the funny thing about the system is no matter how much money you make, you feel like you never are secure. I mean, there is a point where you do, but, like, even if you have, like, $1 million nowadays, you still, like, you think, like, okay, but I have to invest this effectively to have a large enough income to sustain my lifestyle. And so then you're tempted to find the most effective investment strategies instead of the most ethical. And then,
a lot of times that leads to exploitation.
Right, which leads to exploitation. Like, so, like, even if you have like $1 million, which is like a pretty good sum, like you still
you're above. When we're talking like the percentile of the world, you're above above the 20% of the world.
The mindset of scarcity we have is so strong that it's still like, because like I'm just gonna throw out, like, our father is kind of pretty close, like where he could eventually get there, but the mindset is still like, okay, but this medical scenario, if I lost my health insurance, could still bankrupt me, or like, you know, like I'm trying so hard to meet
Oh, yeah.
ends meet.
The
I
stress is
can't
still
afford
real.
to pay for other people's stuff. Like, so like the mindset is still to like defend your own because there's still this chance of you going broke.
Yeah.
And so I think,
And that's why I was going to say we need the safeguards for everyone. So
Right.
and when stress levels go down, people tend to be healthier.
right, and I think that would be a big mindset change that would allow us to make these shifts towards like veganism and stuff. I think we're segueing into maybe a UBI.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was like, I think we should end it here. I think we did good. I think
Yeah.
we think we defended our veganism. And remember, guys, you guys can reach us at OurStrangeIdeas, all lowercase, at gmail.com. And we'll post a link to it. But yeah,
Hell
fuck
yeah.
you. Have a great day. And let's make the world a worse place. But don't just take our ideas for it, because this is our strange ideas.
Hell yeah. Praise Donald Trump.